Hello and welcome to the Hibs Observer Thursday afternoon briefing with myself, Liam Bryce, joined by Matty Fairnie of the Long Bangers podcast. Today we're going to have a wee look at the final days of the transfer window, what the Hibs still need, what are Matty's hopes for that, what would be a success between now and the window closing. And we've obviously, me and Patrick have been on this week previewing the game against Dundee at the weekend, but we'll also get Matty's thoughts on that as well. Another big game for Hibs. But first of all, Matty, thank you. Thanks again for joining
No
us.
worries.
How are we? How are we keeping?
Yeah, good. Just looking forward to Saturday. Really, we're on the countdown now. It's looking like a big game, eh? So
Aye.
I'm excited for it.
I mean, I think last time I had you on, you, I think to describe, I think you were a kind of mix of still sort of tentative optimism with a kind of dose of realism as to the current situation in there as well. I mean, about a week or so on, another game, obviously going out the cup. Has your overall mood changed since then? Hard to
Nah, not
say.
really. Not
No.
really. I think you can't take too much from what happened on Sunday. Like we shot
Yeah.
ourselves in the foot again, obviously. But we also found a way back into the game when we didn't look like we were going to. So there was some positives. Scored a cracking goal. So you know, you got to look for the light somewhere.
Aye, we're always trying to grasp the positives on here. I think, in a way, I mean, obviously, it's never nice going out the cup, especially when it's going to be a target at the start of every season for Hibs to go as far in that as possible. But I mean, when you've kind of got a double header against Celtic like that, in a way, are you just kind of happy to get that out the road now? It's all said and done now.
Yeah, I think so. It's you're not hiding in nothing, really. There is the like you could win a game, and if you win one of them, it sort of sets you up. But the chances of that happening are pretty small. So I think it's almost damage limitation, and we never got a hiding in either of the games as much as it looked
Hmm.
like it might have been at one point. So we've not come through it unscathed because we've got no points and we're out the cup. But it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah,
It's like
aye.
being pickpocketed but not beaten up with it.
Yeah, aye. They've took your phone, your wallet, but they've not gave you a kicking. Aye. Aye, I suppose, all things considered, you'd probably take it at the end of the day, as much as you'd rather still have your phone in your wallet. But
Yeah,
aye, no, I like that. It's a good analogy, actually. I'll steal that at some point in the future.
nice
I
one.
think I dare say we'll use it again at some point this season. So yeah, the kind of topic of the day, as I said at the top of the show, was just to kind of look at the final days of the transfer window. We're ticking down towards the end of it now. Um, the business end, if you like. But Hibs have obviously already done a lot of business, 9 signings so far, kind of spread across the pitch. So I suppose just the main question is, in an ideal world, um, what would you still like to see happen over these last kind of week or so that we've got left?
I think the area of the pitch that we're really crying out for reinforcements is still the midfield.
Yeah,
Um, Obviously, we've brought Nicky Cadden in, who can play on the left hand side. Junior Hoylett, I think, is probably more advanced than a midfielder. We'll obviously know about interest in Luke McCowan. I think we spoke about that last time it was on, and that sort of profile of player is probably what Hibs are missing. So, I think if I had a wish list, it would probably be those two central midfielders, like to bring that in, maybe another centre half
yeah.
as well, just to get a bit of competition in there.
Hmm. So like two central midfielders, obviously a McCowan type. Have you got another sort of profile in mind?
Uh, an identikit of McCowan, I think. I always say so. We either need somebody else like that that's going to have plenty of legs, plenty of create, the work rate, the tenacity, all these things that we talked about last time. We spoke
Hmm.
about them, or we need to bring in like Russell Latipi, Scott Allen type wee midfield wizard to
Yeah,
start creating chances, because I think that's the other thing that's missing for the midfield is that creativity through the middle of the park. We're all
yeah.
right on the wings, like we can create plenty of chances through the wings, but coming through the centre of the park, I think we're still a wee bit weak there. So if such a player still exists these days in football, it would be good to get one in.
Aye. I know. I mean, because obviously Josh Campbell he's been in that number 10 role. He's been the guy that David Gray's put at the kind of the tip of the midfield to, I suppose, to sort of provide those sort of goal contributions, if you like. But I mean, you need other options in there. I mean, I do think, and I'm sure the hope at Hibs will be that in time that Rudy Molotnikov can step into that role, because I think that's where he's played a lot of his football in the academy. Obviously, he's maybe started on the left since he's come in to the first team. But I mean, he only turned 18 back in May, so while he's probably the long-term hope for that role, you probably don't expect to see too much responsibility put on him. Sorry, at this stage, do you?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, you don't want to be relying on him. It was the same with Roddy Whittaker last year when he was brought in right back. Great to see them coming into the team, but really, that's not what you should be pinning your hopes on. Molotnikov has looked brilliant when he's come in. I've been really impressed with him. I definitely think he could sit in that number 10 role, no bother. But it would be good to let him be sort of bled into that position rather than thrown into it.
Yeah.
Josh Campbell, I think, is still a bit too unreliable for us to rely on him over the course of the season. Sometimes Josh Campbell, I think, is brilliant, and then other times it just doesn't quite work out for him. So, yeah, I think if I was David Gray and I was needing somebody in that number 10 position, I would be wanting to bring somebody in.
Yeah, because as you say, Josh Campbell, he has qualities. He can pop up with a goal. He can pop up with assists. He sort of provides a sort of forward. I mean, he's got energy at that kind of, and obviously that's as important defensively for what David Gray wants to do, as well as going forward. But as you say, he's not quite that sort of Scott Allen, almost maverick type player. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's never really, that's never really been his game, though, has it?
No, he's much more function than form, isn't he? Like, he knows how to compete, and he does the basics well, but I don't think he has that wee eye for the magic that somebody like Scott Allen would have.
Yeah, aye, but as you say, I mean, those players are they seem harder and harder to come by in general in modern football these days. You know what I mean? Like a guy who maybe doesn't fit a certain mold. Everybody's a kind of 6, 8, 10, but it was hard to pin guys like that down. But they're a bit of maybe a dying breed almost in the modern game.
Yeah, it's Pep's fault, isn't it? Like, he's got everybody just playing short passes all the time. Everybody picks up the ball and tries to make something happen themselves. So, as good a manager as Pep Guardiola is, I fully blame him for it.
He's got an awful lot of answer for that guy. He really has. I mean, obviously McCowan. I feel like maybe we're kind of running out of things to say. But I mean, it's obviously Hibs have made overtures to try and get him in. Dundee, they have their valuation. They're well within their rights to stick to that. I think McCowan himself, he's probably in a position where, obviously, I think that we've talked before about the fact that if Hibs are making official bids, then the way the world in the transfer window is, they've probably had some encouragement from the players' camp that he would be interested in a move, because they're not going to be throwing money at it otherwise. But he's kind of he's in a comfortable position almost. He doesn't seem like the type who's going to try and force his way out. He'll probably know that if Dundee hold on to him, then it comes to January, he can look at. He's going to have offers. I think kind of the basic point I'm trying to make is, he's probably going to get, if he chooses to leave Dundee, McCown, he's probably going to get a good move. Whatever happens, there's so much interest in him. So I mean, are you still holding out much hope on that front, or do you feel like that's one that's maybe starting to drift away a wee bit?
No, I'm still quite optimistic that it will happen. I think the spanner in the works has been this fixture on Saturday, where I don't think Dundee would be especially keen to sell him ahead of us playing them. So that will hold it up, and I actually think Dundee will probably hold on to him for as long as they can and leave it right to the end of the window, assuming they can get somebody lined up. Because I suppose from a selling club's point of view, that's the other thing that they have to consider is that they sell in enough time that they can bring in a replacement. But I think if they know that they're going to accept the bid at some point, they'll probably have the wheels in motion for replacing them already. I think it's interesting to see whether or not he plays on Saturday. But we talked about it a wee bit on our podcast on Monday night. To say it's weird when a player's in that sort of position, isn't it? They come in and the team that are playing them are obviously trying to sign him. And I think there's a risk for the player that it affects their concentration, and they have the home crowd no doubt sort of paying particular attention to him. The away support will be singing his name, and I think it could just be a difficult position for the player to be in.
Yeah, it can be. We actually had a wee bit on the website about this morning. Tony Docherty was he was asked about it. Obviously, he's been doing his pre-match stuff, and I think he kind of struck the same tone as he always has with us. He's not, giving it too much credence. He's been really full in his praise of the player. If anybody hasn't seen it, I'll just paraphrase it now about this. So he was asking directly about the prospect of playing McCowan against Hibs with all this interest and speculation and how it might possibly affect him. And he just said plainly, it doesn't affect my thinking. I've spoken to Luke like I always do on a daily basis, and he's fully focused. He is a Dundee player. He's fully committed to Dundee, and you can see that in the performances he's putting in. He's fully committed to putting that in again on Saturday. So, I mean, sounds like he's happy from that. It sounds like he's happy to play him. I don't know, obviously what managers say in public sometimes can be very different to what the actual situation is. But at least on the face of it, he doesn't, it kind of suggesting that he will play.
Yeah, and that probably speaks to the character of the player himself. Mm-hmm. If the manager's trusting him to go into that position, in that situation, and still be able to perform and put in a shift and give the proverbial 110% for the jersey, etc., then that probably says a lot about McCowan and probably reinforces why we would want to sign him.
Yeah, I suppose the probably ideal scenario is he's left off the team bus before it leaves Easter Road on Saturday. But we'll see what happens with that moving forward. Again, it seems to still be a live situation. Plenty of, not many days left in the window, but a lot can happen in a day when it comes to transfers. So we'll obviously be keeping an eye on that, and we'll see what happens from there on. So remind me, because my short-term memory is obviously terrible. It was a centre-back, you were saying.
Yeah,
so probably most comfortable with.
Somebody to support the centre-back and then a couple of midfielders. I think obviously Ekpiteta has not had a stellar start to his time at Hibs, although I think apart from it's a stupid thing to say for a centre-half, right, but apart from the glaring mistakes that he's made, I think he's actually been pretty good in terms of challenges, blocks, winning headers, etc. The sort of the bread and butter for defenders. He's done all right, and I think he makes some allowance for him in the fact that he's playing in a new defence. We haven't really settled it. Even on Sunday against Celtic, there he was playing in a back three, whereas the week before he'd been in a back four. I think he missed the Celtic game as well. From memory, I think O'Hora played that one and Ekpiteta sat out. It might be the other way around, but there's still that. I think with time and playing alongside your centre half pair and the goalkeeper, you get a bit better understanding. And things like Sunday, where he's passed it across the goalkeeper, happen less because they know where the goalkeeper is going to be, they know what foot to play it to, and all the rest of it. So I think although he's been a wee bit ropey, I still think there's enough positive signs there that to suggest he'll be fine for the season. But you want some competition in there. There was a bit of talk about Rocky potentially leaving. A couple of clubs reported to be interested in him, and I don't know how much is in that. But you want to be able to mix it up. So if it gets to the case that Ekpiteta doesn't stop making these mistakes, you want to be able to take him out the team and put somebody else in. So I think I would like a centre half in to cover there. And I know David Graves was talking about Bevan potentially coming up for Bournemouth, and that would probably do.
Yeah, I think that makes sense at this point. He's obviously somebody that Gray he'll have seen. He said he's a fan of him. The club had a deal in place before. So he's going to be a young guy who he's kind of had a lot of injury problems recently. But I mean, I suppose the positive side of that is like he'll be desperate to go out and play and make an impression. Do you think that makes sense as that kind of final piece of the defensive jigsaw, if you like?
Yeah, I think so. I know he's very highly rated down in Bournemouth as well. So when he came up in January, we did a bit of reading on him, and I know since then he's been given a longer contract at Bournemouth. So they obviously have designs on him long term. So I think if he comes in, he's maybe not a guaranteed starter, but it does give Gray the option to go three at the back more frequently if he sees that as a more useful way of playing than the four at the back.
Yeah, and just to kind of good points on Ekpiteta as well. I think I know exactly what you're saying. Like he's been almost like most of the time he's been fairly steady. I feel, but then there just has been these moments And I think you make good points about the fact that he's playing in a shape that has been changed around. He's I mean I can't profess to have watched too much of Blackpool at any point
No,
over
either.
the past few years, but um, I think when we had a look at his sort of underlying stats and stuff, but when he first joined, I think like you can, without being able to watch a player week in week out, you can get a sort of sense from these numbers as to what sort of style he's been playing, what kind of system he's been playing in. And I think certainly compared to Aora, who came in with this reputation as the ball playing centre back, and I think we've seen that sort of bearing out in the game so far. I think the thing that I really took from Ekpiteta's numbers was it. I'm sure it's on the website somewhere. I could probably dig it out, but he seemed to be playing in a very no nonsense type of role. There wasn't a huge emphasis on him to be the guy build and play out from the back. Like kind of looking at the numbers, it's these kind of radar things we use where it kind of points to different stats. And the impression that I got for it certainly was like this is what most centre halves stats would look like if these programs and applications were around in the 80s. Do you know what I mean? Where there was the role of a centre back was very, very different. So I suppose with Ekpiteta, because I just think we spoke about him on one of the other shows earlier this week, and we were in relation to David Gray's comments about potentially making changes with guys who are making mistakes. But I think you do have to maybe cut Ekpiteta a bit of slack in that he's played against a very high level opponent these last two games, and he's still adjusting to a certain style, and probably a newer style of play than maybe what he's been used to. So I think he deserves a bit of time, I think, is what I'm basically trying to say.
Yeah, and I think Celtic were probably aware of his limitations as well and tried to restrict the amount of times we could play out through O'Hora and sort of forced it onto Ekpiteta. So you've got a team who's really good at sort of making your mind up for you for how you play, and they played on our weaknesses and they got caught out. But I think teams who are not as good as Celtic and won't press us the way that Celtic did will mean that Ekpiteta is expected to do that less, and the play will go through O'Hora instead.
Yeah, aye. So I think he does deserve a bit of time to continue adjusting. So I mean, it wasn't on your wish list at the beginning of the show, but David Gray did suggest last week that after Dylan Vente left, that he would be looking to add another body at the top of the pitch. Now I'm kind of interested as to whether he wants to then try and go for like another out and out striker or just somebody who can play in that forward area of the pitch, because I think like Kieran Bowie obviously can play wide, but he's kind of, the stuff from the press conference last week, he said pretty much out, well, he did like sort of plainly, like, I want to play through the middle, that's why I've come here. So I think when you've got Kukarevich there, who he'll be expecting to play, Bowie's expecting to play, I think if you were to bring in another striker, would it be somebody who, for you, potentially, who knows they're not going to play every week? Rather than, I know there's been kind of speculation about Kevin Nisbet, but I think reading David Gray's interview in the Edinburgh Evening News this week, one that doesn't look like that's one that's going to be on the cards. He's obviously been linked to Aberdeen, so I'm just kind of intrigued as to what Hibs maybe potentially go for there, because then if you end up with three strikers who are all wanting to play every week, that comes with its own challenges, doesn't it?
I think it is a tricky one, because I read Gray's comments in the Observer, and he was talking about they need to be at least the standard of Vente, because otherwise you've weakened the team with that trade. Letting Vente go and bringing in somebody weaker, and that obviously makes sense. So you want to improve, but we'll have, like, when Hoylett is fit again, and I'll not count Ellie in because I think he's on his way out. But you'll have Hoylett, you'll have Bowie, you'll have Kukarevich, you'll have Martin Boyle, that can all play in the forward positions. On the wide side of things, so Hoylett and Cadden, and other Cadden and Boyle on the right hand side. So we've got kind of these options that if you bring another player in, I'm not sure you can guarantee them a starting position. So I suppose the argument, you didn't want to guarantee anybody a starting spot, right? I mean, this is a problem that we've had. But if you want to bring somebody in at that quality, they're going to want to play. I don't think it's a priority. I don't think we'll miss Vente not being there. But I think bringing in Bowie and Kukarevich, that sort of covers that position. But I wouldn't say no. Like you kind of have too many strikers. That's what we want to see, really, isn't it? The folk that stick the ball in the net. So if we get one and we can get a good one, then definitely bring them in, and then I suppose you use that competition to your advantage, and you hopefully have three almost first pick centre forwards that are vying for one or two spots.
Yeah, it might be a question of sort of availability and opportunity as to what happens with that between now and the end of the window. So just on some kind of more immediate matters before we leave it there for today, there's kind of no two ways about it. It's a big game for Hibs this weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems mental way 3 league games into, or the third league game of the season, and we're talking about it being a huge game. But I don't think there's the pressure that maybe people are associating with the game. I don't think it's significant in terms of what happens with David Gray or even for the course of the rest of the season. I think it's one that Hibs can go into and be really excited about. I imagine it's going to be two teams trying to win. I don't think Dundee are going to come in and be happy to settle for a draw. Last season when we saw them at Easter Road, I thought they played all right, but I thought Hibs got the better of them, even without. I think there was a 0-0. I mean, we battered them 0-0 last season. Obviously, we're a different team now. They're a different team, but I think the form that Dundee are in, they're going to come looking to win. Like they'll want to take a scalp. They'll not be happy to settle for a draw. And I think it'll be like two punchers in a boxing match, just taking swings at each other. No thought to kind of getting out the way of the punches, but just sort of taking them and then throwing one of their own. I'm really looking forward to the game. I think it's going to be quality.
Yeah. Aye, that'll end up a goalless draw now, won't it? I totally agree with you. But well, from a Hibs point of view, hopefully not. But we're going to leave it there today. Actually, no, we've got a bit of fan mail here for you, Matty. Before we
nice
before we leave it, we're always delighted to have Matty on here. So yeah, there you go. We'll leave it that today, folks. Thank you very much for joining us. We're building into the weekend, as we said. We press conference, at HTC tomorrow. You'll be able to hear from David Gray and a member of the first team squad heading into Saturday, and we'll have our usual match day coverage from Easter Road at the weekend. So, Matty, thank you very much for joining us. I take it you'll be there on Saturday as always.
Oh, I definitely can't wait.
Oh, magic, great stuff. So, right. Folks, if you're watching us on YouTube, please do consider hitting the subscribe button to help us continue to grow the channel. And just a thank you to anybody as well who took up our new season sale as it was running over last week. You might have heard us badgering on about it a wee bit here and there. We really do appreciate everybody who signed up to that, and obviously everybody who continues to support the Hibs Observer. So we'll see you this weekend, folks. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a good weekend. Cheers.